minutes?
I do not.
Okay, so could I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Sean, second.
I'll second.
Greg, okay. So that's done. All right. The drought policy document comes next. And I'd like to thank those who worked on this draft. A draft was posted posted with the minutes. Does anybody have any comments on this document? I'll make a couple of introductory comments. One, this is supposed to document what we do every month. It's not supposed to change what we do every month. It's supposed to document what we do every month. So, and what we do every month in grocery store English is we look at what's going on around us in terms of what's going on in the state, what's going on in the region. Then we look at our own well levels. Greg takes us through a discussion of our own well levels with a focus quantitatively on where those levels are at that particular month relative to where they have been at that particular month in the past. So the well levels we look at and that percentage comparison is seasonally adjusted. So you would think that after a period of heavy drawdowns, like in the summertime, they'd be kind of low in August. And so today we'll be comparing August of 2025 to past August. And then we weigh all that and we say, what is our, how do we view the situation relative to a drought? In other words, are we not in one or are we in one? How serious it is, and there are gradations associated with that. And depending on the situation, we would then get into a discussion on page 2 of recommending one or more of the various steps to reduce water use. So this document does not lay out a mechanical process. It identifies the issues that we consider, and then we take those issues and assign a level. And then we go to page 2 and we go, given that level and where we are in the time of the year and what we think's coming and so forth and so on, what do we think the town board ought to do? So there's nothing mechanical about this. This is a document that describes a series of judgments that the committee makes, and the discretion that the committee has in this policy document is intentional. And so what the drafters have tried to do is kind of lay that out. And actually, I think they've done a great job in laying that out. So with that intro, does anybody have any comments on this document?
I don't really. I mean, you described it well. It's a general pathway that doesn't lock us into very narrow decision making, and it's both forward looking and backward looking, kind of taking in a sense of everything that's going on and giving us that subjective judgment. I would just say I think we've largely been doing this, but if we adopt this, I would say we need to be more formal in that we take a vote every month on establishing what the status is. We kind of back into often we're okay and that's fine, but I think if you're adopting this document, you need to kind of say, so now, do we all agree? Yes, boom, and it is very kind of more established so that it's a constant.
Okay. Any other comments from the committee?
I'd say the one thing that there's a lot of information in the report as we generate this thing month after month. And do we want to have a separate checklist of here's the things that we want the town board to hear almost as a separate document, a cover page, if you will, saying here's what we think, here's what our judgment on how serious the situation is. And we think that you should do this. And then a second portion of that, which is the report that we've been doing for years now. So it's an option, and I put it out because it might make sense to give them one page, to give them a top cover page that says, here's what we want you to know and why. Briefer, that I sometimes think that people get the report and say, there's, they put a lot of charts together and let's go on to the next topic. That's an option, I think. That's all, that's as far as, I'm not
Kind
going
of
to see.
summarizing our determination, is that what you're saying, on a given month?
Yeah, I as a thought, when I think of when a bunch of stuff comes in, if it's got a cover page and 13 pages, I don't often go all the way back to the page 13. So to give a bullet notice, if you will. I don't know. I don't remember us talking about this.
No, I mean, I think that's fine. I think to the extent that that is accompanying our formal process of, we have established this status, and it could be 3 lines if it's like do nothing, and it would be a little longer if we're actually asking them to potentially use water restrictions. We would explain ourselves a little bit in that kind of cover.
So I could see a cover sheet that's filled out every month that says, what's the regional level? It's one of several, okay? What is our Big Four average percentile in our own wells? What is our island drought level determination, which is going to be one of these
Okay, yes.
6 levels? And then what, if any, actions do we recommend? We could just,
Agree, that's
and
exactly.
that would be a,
Yeah,
I
I think that,
also, oh, sorry.
Peter, welcome.
Yeah,
Hi.
I apologize. I was a couple of minutes late. The only thing that I would add to what you were just saying, I thought what you're saying is quite good, and I think having a structured summary makes a lot of sense. The one thing I would just add is, the committee, optionally, as we discuss things, really should be thinking about, have we deviated from what we expect historically? This last year was just a radically different kind of year in terms of when rain fell, not the quantity, but the pattern of rainfall. So if we're in a pattern that's dramatically different, anything that stands out to us as a committee as a reason to take a different stance than we would ordinarily take, which is, we're now in drawdown, be careful, we expect recharge in the spring and in the winter, we should be flagging on a cover sheet. That's important, where things have varied. Because again, what we're expecting is, with climate change, what we're expecting is not just drought or excessive rainfall, but the patterns to be disrupted that are typical for us.
Okay, so let's just add in that 1-page summary, a comment field
Exactly.
to identify those. So what I've got is, what is the regional determination? What is the percentile well levels for our own? What is a comment field? What is our drought determination as a result? And what recommendations do we make and why as a 5th?
And most of that should be very quick to fill out because it's what Greg's work is. But I also agree with Sean's comment that we should have a quick discussion at the beginning of meetings to determine, is there something specific that we need to alert the board to?
Okay. I had a couple of questions here. And I remember our lawyer saying, I would have done this by email, except our lawyer said, do not deliberate by email. Okay, deliberate in the committee. So here's a question. I note that we have 6 drought status categories on the top of page 5. And then in a similar, we have a list under item 3 on the top of page 1, we have 6 drought categories, starting with normal and going to exceptional. And on the bottom of page 1, we have 5. And what's missing is severe. Is that intentional?
No.
Okay.
And so that's just an oversight, but I think the probably the more focused question is the percentiles that are here. I was never part of any discussion with them. I don't know when you came up with them and whether people thought they were rational or, what have you. So I just tried to use what was there historically. That may be worth more consideration and not just rushing to adopt this if we want to kind of think about those percentiles, or if you think they're a guide enough, that's fine too. I don't.
Okay, so that was my second question.
Yep.
It's the percentiles. I'm sorry, Greg.
Yes.
Should I go ahead with,
You have a question?
well, no, I was going to
Thomas?
suggest some somewhat different percentiles. It struck me that normal would take you'd be normal anything over 20%, the 20th percentile, according to the bottom of page 1. And then you have a series of gradations that take you down to exceptional.
I'm a little lost
In
there.
other words, on here,
Oh, okay.
anything above the 20th percentile is normal. That
I
frankly,
generally thought all of them were low,
I thought that's my reaction.
but like I
thought
said,
they were low.
I wasn't part of the original because I would have said, well, gee, at 5th percentile, we were extreme well before that. But, again, I think that begs some conversation. I don't know what the history of them.
Okay, so get out your pencils as a suggestion. Write in severe between moderate and extreme
Yep.
on the lower part of page 1. And I'll suggest these percentiles, again, just on the basis of common sense, ready? Normal is 30 and up. So I've increased it from 20 and up to 30 and up.
Oh, so you would say if you were in the 49th percentile, that's like 50-50, that's the halfway
That's
point.
normal.
That's normal, but you should have a window around the
Yeah.
center point, right?
Yeah, so the center point is
He goes
50.
as much as
I go
20%
down to
below the
30.
50, right?
So
So you're saying
normal is 30 and up,
30 and higher, okay.
okay? Look, this is just for discussion purposes. Abnormally dry would be between 20 and 30. So that's a 10% band. Moderate would be between 15 and 20. Severe would be between 10 and 15. Extreme would be between 5 and 10, and exceptional under 5. So what I've done is I've raised them a little bit
And granular.
and given a wider band around abnormal,
Okay.
abnormally dry, and then everything is as it was, 5 percentiles going down. So that's a suggestion. I don't know.
There was a lot of spaghetti, and getting these numbers, there was a lot of spaghetti tossed against the walls.
Okay.
Frankly, it wasn't, it was, how did it sound?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And your two partners are missing from the committee at this point, the two partners in that spaghetti throwing, Ken and Doug.
I couldn't hear Peter, sorry.
The previous members of the committee were part of that
We're working
process
with
with
you.
you, and we don't have the benefit of their, what they were thinking at the time.
Peter, you've got a lot of history on this. Greg, you
Yeah.
do too. Are you okay with that?
Oh, I like the adjustments you were making. I thought that that was the right way to go, and to have extreme in there is important. And having those as small bands, the more abnormal levels being smaller bands is important because you're starting to get into the action range, and you don't want to go too far into severe when and not know that you're heading right into extreme. So I think that that's absolutely right, and a little wider band around normal because it is. There's 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 a range of variability we can certainly tolerate.
Okay?
And working with these is fine. If in 6 or 8 months we say, gee, maybe that window was too small. But I think to avoid this.
Again, it's the
a good thing.
language is such that this is a guide. It's only one factor in what would
Right.
bring you to conclusions, so you could easily override these categories because there are other things you've said.
Correct.
The one thing about those names that we have on that section versus the regional, Meg, when we were talking through this back in a while, it was, did we want to think about the DEC nomenclature versus the regional federal stuff? And I think that what has come out with the numbers that we have on that section, take away the part that I think confused a little bit. What's a D1? What's a D2? Is the word, we're still using the word severe. That's good. So hopefully, Meg, you're yeah, because that was an issue back when.
And obviously, all of this is tying into the other work that we're doing around irrigation code and restrictions potentially. So,
Right. Okay, so we've got a couple of changes here. We're inserting on the lower part of page 1, severe in between moderate and extreme. And the percent, I'm not hearing any objection to these percentages. The percentages start at 30, normal is 30 and above. Abnormally dry is between, normal is above 30. Abnormally dry is between 20 and 30. Moderate is between, I guess, 15 and 19, or 15 and less than 20. I'll figure that out when the time comes. Severe is 10 to 15. Extreme is 5 to 10. And exceptional is less than 5. Okay, so we will revise that. Joe, are you okay with this document and these changes?
Yes, I would recommend that you include an execution section on procedure for how this will work its way through into the public domain. This would have, I guess it becomes a letter of recommendation from the chairman of this committee to the town board. And then I'm not sure if you want to discuss or make recommendations to the town board on how they would disseminate this information to the public, but I think it's helpful to have that discussion at this level of the committee so that they have some ideas on how to present this and make it repeatable. They do the same thing every time there's a change in the status, particularly when there's enforcement issues related, so that we can make a smooth transition. Typically, legislation has those types of subsections on, execution and enforcement, and at least identifying who's going to be responsible for what aspects of those. We always kick around a lot of these different layers of restriction. One concern technically is that there's not a lot of impact here in terms of total volume of water reduced. So these, I think, are largely more about the public perception and managing the drought. But it's difficult to meaningfully reduce water consumption when the island's primary water consumption really is just domestic use to begin with. And there's a very, very small amount of irrigation. And many of these, pool restrictions are things that will be difficult for people to execute. Some of the homes are on automatic pool filling systems to top off. If those people aren't home, we would have no way to know if that's actually being reduced in practice. And then a general comment that I'd like to include about, on all of our water policy is being mindful of our shift to outsourced water. I don't think that's a policy we should be doubling down on in the long term. Looking at these restrictions, I think that's inevitable in this instance, that you try to limit ground source water. Therefore, if it's a must-have water, it must come from someplace else. But generally speaking, I think we need to be thinking more broadly and sustainably. That's, it's not just our community that's facing that drought. So to say we're going to continue to allow topping off of pools or irrigation unchecked as long as you're a cistern, we have to acknowledge that water is likely coming from another drought restricted place as well. So that, I don't think that's good practice to just push the source of water off island and insist it come from our neighbors. It seems like the trend in the neighboring towns is already moving towards restricting that water supply through their own irrigation policies. So I want to be mindful, the committee should be mindful of those decisions as they craft policy, that it might not be so available,
Okay, so would you amend this document in any way to reflect those comments?
Not
Or would you
not specific.
wait?
Yeah.
I think the summation that we said we would do each month, putting a paragraph at the end of this saying that that's the form it's going to take, and that with that, it'll be a letter to the board if there are actions required to them, with very specifics about whatever, and recommendations about disseminating with notify me or signs in the center, or trying to, we're not necessarily going to give all the exact, they're going to have to use their judgment, but kind of generally what we think the path would be if there are communications with the public.
And I'd suggest that the new town attorney review this and package it into a more comprehensive piece of legislation to include those other categories of, steps for execution, penalties for offenses, who the enforcement agencies will be. They can help.
This document or the?
So this was not intended to be per se legislation. It was really to be like a policy guide to us. But so the next step about, I think, if there are water restrictions and what are the penalties imposed by the town, and that, my guess is maybe that goes into irrigation. I mean, it's kind of a separate, but it's part of water use. So that would probably go into that, which we're looking at.
This discussion, the very next agenda item is what you're referring to, which is the irrigation regulations, the irrigation subcommittee. And I'm going to reserve commenting on what Joe just commented on just for a second, because I think that we're very close to concluding. Andrew, you correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me like we're pretty close to adopting this now. Joe's comment about it being lawyered, I also agree with Sean that this doesn't need to be. The next topic is going to be where that lawyering comes in, crafting regulations. There may be something, Joe, that you felt needed to go, but
I misunderstood then. I didn't understand this was just a recommendation for the town board.
Right.
That
It's
would-
our, initial
I
draft.
mean, in theory, it could be adopted under, they've established the WAC, and this is, as part of like code or something, but it's not necessary, I don't think. I think really the focus is, what does the town board do with the recommendation, and then what are they able to enforce or whatever, which I think we can handle in irrigation or somewhere else.
So then how will these restrictions be implemented? Just on a
Where
recommendation?
it's a recommended, we don't have the power, so we have to go to the town board, and then they would use their emergency authority if they can all agree to take some action.
I see. Okay. So this is not intended to be a comprehensive
No,
piece.
correct.
It's
Feeds into a different process.
and it would be executed exclusively through some sort of emergency declaration
Right.
by the board. Okay.
Right.
And also, I think that the main point here is that to have a point of reference so that communication with a wider community, this is a period of time where you should be conserving water, things like signs at the firehouse or in the town center, would be based on we're moving into one of these extreme or severe levels.
Understood.
Okay.
So I would
All that
move that we
said-
adopt it with the changes that you have in place,
I
Andrew.
wanted to make one more change.
Okay,
If we ever recommend an action, we should commit to having public input at our committee about the matter. Sometimes our public input is at the tail end of the meeting, but we should have public input about our recommendation when we're talking about it. And we should put that in the policy document.
in terms of like when we move levels, or if we're recommending a restriction.
If we're recommending restrictions on page 2.
Okay.
We should commit to having that public input at our meeting.
Mhm.
Otherwise, the public's just sitting there and doesn't have a formal chance to act until it gets to the town board. And they should have an input here.
That sounds very good.
Fair enough.
Okay, all right, so I'm summarizing the changes. Or can I have a motion to accept this as a policy document with the following changes? 1, insert severe in between moderate and extreme drought on the bottom of page 1. Second, assign the following percentages to the various categories. 30 and above, normal. These are the well levels. Percentiles, 30 and above, normal. 20 to 30, abnormally dry. 15 to 20, moderate. 10 to 15, severe. 5 to 10, extreme. Less than 5, exceptional. And insert a paragraph saying that recommendations shall be from the chair to the town board, and to the extent specific restrictions are requested, the committee commits to taking public input at one of its meetings when those matters are discussed. So can I have
Would you
Yeah, a motion to
announce
approve
the intention at the prior meeting and then have the public come in for that?
I think we'd
How
have
would that
to,
work?
we'd post it in the agenda.
That's the only way they.
Yeah, otherwise I think it's too slow.
Well,
Yeah.
that's one thing, yeah.
Yeah. So the agendas are posted generally in the middle of the prior week. So, okay. So could I have
that. Motion to
Peter
approve
did.
that.
okay, Peter, second?
Second,
All those in favor?
I will take the pen to make those changes and share it that I didn't miss anything, but I think we're clear.
Okay, all right. So let's go now to item 3,
Oh, we're going back.
precipitation in the well status report. Greg?
Okay, so the well status report, which was issued as a draft.
So I didn't get it by email.
You didn't?
No, I couldn't find it.
Let me see if you're on,
You're
on here.
okay, so I think the
You missed it.
operative
Yeah,
sentence is, I couldn't find it.
yeah.
Okay, so that's on me. Okay,
If you're deleting emails like I
yeah,
am,
right, okay,
if you spent,
all right,
might have spent that 3/4 of a second before you hit the delete.
okay. So maybe just on my behalf, or me, go slowly, thanks. Okay,
Very good. So the aquifer height reports, there's the national, there's the national and the state. The national moved us out of normal to abnormally dry in their report of July 22. So the entire Long Island is now in that category. There's not a lot, around it. Connecticut, things are pretty dry out at Cape Cod, but that's as close as it gets. The DEC has us as normal, so that they're saying that officially a drought is not expected, and they don't record their date of issuance. The chart showing the ranking of monthly well heights by percentile of the, we ticked a little bit down, basically because the Goat Hill well came up a little compared to what had been the recent. We're at the 20, what's about the 20th percentile right now. So based on what we just went through on the report, I think that brings us, is it to moderate?
Guarded.
Guarded.
Right at the cut between.
Right at the cut, yeah.
Right at the cut, okay.
Excuse
On
me,
this
Greg,
page,
so when was the last, when were the last readings done? When are these readings as of?
As of the July,
16 or something.
July
it
3rd.
must have,
If it's the version I have, that's July 3rd.
should be actually,
The only reason I ask is because August, the rain gauge showed a 20th of an inch so far.
Yeah.
So
it showed what?
like a 20th of an inch total rainfall for the entire month so far.
Okay,
So
no, this
we're
is
definitely
actually
worse off
Ju-
now than we were then, and I can just tell from the height of Fresh Pond, so.
These are actually based on the information from July. I think it was July 3 to August 5. So it reflects the data from.
Right,
the,
before August 5th, all right.
and I should probably write that a little bit clearer on the report. The chart with the, again, this is the percentile chart. And what, the shallower wells came up above the middle point, above the 50th percentile. There was only one well, Little Ram, increased in height, probably due to the impact of tides. Little Ram gets battered. The tides really strongly affect it. And all four of the big four wells turned up. Again, not incredibly bad for some of the bad seasons that we've had, except for Goat Hill. Goat Hill is down. There's only 2 years data that we've ever had, and we're at 5.43 on the day that it was read. And the two really bad ones were 4.96 and 4.73. So that is historic lows that we've had there. And I guess we'll find out how things go as we go along. Is there any questions on the table here? That everybody understands that there are 12 of these tables, and I build the new information into that. And that's right. It's 32 days of reading, 7/3 to 8/5. I did write it on there, which I wanted to. And the last thing on the in the report is what I call the raw data. And what this is these are, there's no comparison to what the history is. This is just what is coming out, and you can see the strong drop that happened at the last reading, basically. That Goat Hill, for example, looks like it's dropped down a full half foot, as pretty much did Congdon, which is, again, not atypical for July and August readings. I mean, as there's a lot of water being drawn up, there's not a lot of rain falling, and water consumption is strong.
Okay, so if you go to that raw level, that raw at the end,
Say it again, I'm sorry.
if you go to the last page, which is the raw levels of the big four, am I reading this right to conclude that we're significantly worse off than we were in 2024 at the same time
Mhm.
Yes.
on all the wells? And we're kind of where we were, a little bit worse, actually, some more, some less, than we were in 23. If I go to August of 23, we're a little bit up relative to August of 23. And if I go to August of 22, we're pretty much the same.
I'd say that is correct.
If I go to August of 21, we're down a little, but
21-22
not much.
period is you're talking about a low,
That,
you're
What?
comparing to a period of time that was relatively dry. Compared to the earlier rise in rainfall generally for the last 2 decades, we had a dip and then we've come back up a little bit, but now you're back to kind of not that great. You're comparing against not great numbers.
Yeah, but I'm still comparing against 3 years of
Yes. Of
not great numbers. 24 was a, right.
and a steady decline, you know, until that burst happened in 2014.
Right. Okay.
And you're getting a
That's not
10%
2014, that's
loss.
2020.
Well,
Yeah.
the higher ones are losing more inches, but all of them are losing about 10%.
I'm not following you.
In percentile.
Percentile,
I
yeah,
think each month we keep going down about 10% in the percentile
all
ranking.
of the big four, and the big, you know, the top two are higher levels to start with, so 10% of that is about 5 inches.
Yeah.
Lower ones are 3.5 inches, and they're all fitting in.
Okay. All right. So the $64 question is, what do we want to assign for the, what's your, oh, that's great. Put it on great. What's your recommendation for assigning a drought level for the island based on this latest report?
What did it sound like? When you know, typically, we've used guarded for a pretty wide space. So it's either a moderate or guarded. And given what we know, I think there was some rain that, I don't know if Peter, we did have some rain back in July 25th or so.
Yes, there was some rain at the end of July, but since August, there's been almost none.
Yeah. So I think moderate drought, if we want to put it that way, that's a good start.
Definitely we're worse than guarded. And I will say that I don't know if Lisa shared with everyone, but Suffolk County Water Authority had asked her to distribute a notification that, you know, all of Suffolk County was being asked to limit water use in this period. They were concerned on the mainland of Suffolk.
So commenting on that, my understanding of what's motivating that is a distribution system constraint rather than a raw water availability.
My
Yeah,
understanding.
we are very different than Suffolk County because of the absence of public water. West Neck is a little different, obviously. They are a public water system. I think that it's very important for us to be sensitive to the nearshore concerns, which are, you know, where's push is going to come to shove. Because, you know, people irrigating in parts of the island won't, or excessive water use in parts of the island won't have a very big impact, like what could potentially happen near shore with an unknown distribution system. No
And
imbalanced water use.
Okay, great.
As far as distribution system, I'm not certain. My understanding is that they were pumping all that they could and putting it into the water towers, and they were still drawing more out.
That's because they can't refill the tanks at night. Because they don't have the transmission capacity.
Yes, that people are using it for watering, that's correct.
For irrigation.
Right, for irrigation.
And they've been citing that as much as 70% of the water use is irrigation these days. So yeah, it's a capacity. They want to put in bigger pipes and all that, but it's also part and parcel to some drought as well. I think they could keep pumping if they had bigger, but not sure that they would, find themselves in a great situation either if we could keep being dry, but.
Okay, so your recommendation
Would be moderate,
would be moderate drought.
because and it feels severe, but I think moderate is what we've got in there.
Comments about that from the committee?
Yeah, I mean, I would have said I was on the cusp, but I think I'd say moderate, and then, this is the time we try it out, where we say no watering your lawn between in daylight hours, and we put it out there, and we know not everybody's going to comply, but we start to learn how to work the system. We got to, because it's going to happen eventually, more severely,
At
but
the moment, it can be advisory.
Yeah.
So, wait, I'm trying to take this in order. I'm trying to assign the drought level first, and then we'll go to the.
Moderate.
Yeah, moderate, yeah, I don't think you'll hit below 15% next year.
Yeah.
Okay. Moderate? Okay,
Agreed.
motion by Greg, moderate, second Sean, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. All right, moderate. Now, the next question is, I'm taking this in order. Do we recommend any restrictions? We go to page 2.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing at this point is whether you do something like, say, and whether it's voluntary or mandatory, no watering during daylight hours, kind of adopting kind of Suffolk County's kind of general guidelines. And then, whether it's no washing cars or boats or something like that. I don't know that is a secondary, that gets people crazy that they can't wash their cars, but at least either voluntary or mandatory, no watering during the day advisory.
Makes sense.
That advisory tends to be for irrigation, is in our document for irrigation systems. Most of those should already be set for nighttime watering anyway. So it's not really something all that onerous. If you're hand watering, we're not really making that restriction. But, somebody who's has their sprinklers going in the middle of the day, they're making a mistake in the first place.
I know,
So
still
not so
seeing it
bad to tell
all the
them.
time. Yeah.
All right, when we say during the day, can we put some hours on that and basically say 9 to 6?
Yep.
Okay?
And Stella has her hand up just to,
Well,
I know
what I'm
I'm
gonna do is-
eager to hear her point of view on this one.
What I'm going to do is get the views of have this discussion with the committee, but before we call for a motion, I would like
Look,
public input.
Mhm.
So then we'll have the public input, then we'll close that, then we'll have a motion. More discussion and a motion. Okay, so everybody okay to open for public input? Okay, sorry, I'm a little bit of a process policeman here. Let's go to the room. Thank you all for coming. Anybody like to make a comment? So so where we are is moderate drought and no daytime watering proposed between the hours of 9 and 6. That's where we are.
That sounds good. I would like to.
Could you,
My name's Walter Richards. Don't stand up.
no, you don't have to stand up, but
I'd like to just start by.
Actually, he does have to stand up.
yeah, already seen by
You
by
have
the
to
camera.
stand behind this wooden shield.
There it is.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. I had that feeling it was coming. My concern, I'd like to understand the well level a little bit because I do think it relates to the moderate.
Right.
So this discussion that just happened is based on the document that you just approved, correct? Those well
Largely, yes.
categories.
This
So
process.
you did that first, that new process, and now we looked at the wells, and this is where we think it falls. We're measuring the top of the wells, right? I was on the Water Advisory Committee, and I never really totally digested this, and I was just looking for clarification, and Joe might be able to help me with this a little bit also. We're measuring the top of the wells, and we're measuring inches. But what about the entire well depth? So how deep are the wells? So how deep is the Manhasset well?
Well,
How deep is the Manhasset well?
oh, no, go.
It just seems to me from a layman's perspective, that well could be 60, 70 feet deep, and we're measuring inches on the top. So how does that relate to our drought status and saying that, we're in that? How do we come up with that idea?
Yeah, the reason we're measuring from the top is it's height above sea level. So the higher that top elevation is, the more outward pressure there is from the periphery of the island. As you get closer to sea level, eventually if you dip below sea level, then the water will start to come in from the exterior, the salt water pressure from the exterior start to come in. Some of these, the wells, to answer your question about total depth, they vary. Some of them go deeper than others. Some of the monitoring wells are confined on the bottom. And so if you have a confined monitoring well with a clay layer or rock layer, then the top elevation is changing, but the bottom is fixed. So that fresh water can't go any lower. It can't push down with the at the bottom. The unconfined ones can get thicker. As you go higher with the fresh water top elevation, if it's unconfined, the weight of that will start to push down on the bottom, and the lens becomes thicker. So it can move in two directions. So it depends on which well you're looking at, and ultimately we're measuring the top because the top is the best indicator of how much outward pressure you have. As the elevation of that gets lower, there's less force pushing outward.
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong, the big four wells went down, and then there were some periphery wells that went up slightly in the last reading?
Yes, the shallower wells went up a little bit.
Went up a little bit. So if we're talking about the moderate drought status based on those percentiles, and those outward wells went up, we're always concerned about the near shore, right? So if it went up and we're gonna decide to put restrictions on, that doesn't exactly make sense to me if it went up.
The exterior ones tend to be influenced by the tide at the time that the elevation is taken. It's possible there's two major causes for the disparity between the center and the exterior. One is tide influence, like for instance, the Ram Island ones will read higher or lower if that measurement was taken at a higher or low tide. The lens floats, so to speak, of fresh water. And then the other influence is if there was recently rain, the exterior ones respond faster because the water doesn't have to travel as deep. So there's two major instances where there's disparity, and often those are not well correlated with how these measurements are taken. We don't know the precise time. Some of them are more real time now, so we can see, but it's often that the exterior ones are written off because of uncertainty as to what those readings were influenced by.
Right. So we're doing the best we can with an educated guess on what's happening with the
Primarily off the data from the center,
Right.
because those are more stable.
And just to give you, I mean, the heights on the big four wells range from 5.4, one at 5, one at 4, one at 3/10. All of the shallower wells, they're 1.5, 1.75, 2.5, 2. So while it looks like there's less water, the amount of push out that Joe's talking about, they are being pushed out, and they don't have that much pressure compared to.
You push out around the island is 15.6 million gallons a day, roughly, according to some of the reports that I read.
Yeah,
So-
4.5 million a year.
What's that?
The estimates that we've looked at are 4 point something billion gallons per year.
Correct, correct. So 17.6 going out. So as that center comes down a little bit, a little less is gonna push out on the sides.
And salt will push in.
Correct.
That's the other part of the,
At some point, salt could push in or come up from the bottom, especially with upconing as you're drawing on a specific individual as well. It was interesting to note that it was mentioned a little while ago that the irrigation doesn't have as much impact as we may think it has. The 17.6 million going out is really where we lose most of our water that we're not able to recapture or use. And so I understand your policy. I understand that you adopted the moderate status for now. I'm a landscaper. So from a landscaper's perspective, we are going into the fall season, and during the fall season is mostly when planting and reseeding of turf grass and planting of plants is done. So there is a exclusion for that in the town code. So how will restrictions that you're going to be that you could possibly be putting on, I would like you to be mindful that people's livelihoods for doing this kind of work are also at stake, based on these restrictions, in addition to the individual homeowners that are trying to improve the value of their properties. So if you could refresh me again exactly on what your restrictions you're kind of thinking about putting on. Watering in the day, that's it. Watering in the daytime hours was one of my concerns, because for newly seeded grass, you need the seed to stay wet. So in order for it to stay wet, we typically use one unregulated sprinkler according to the town code, and we will move it around throughout the day, which is possibly something that people see. So we will not be able to do that anymore. So I guess we could get a person to go around at night, but that could be kind of problematic as well. Someone sneaking around everybody's property at night, moving these things around.
But Walter,
If we're gonna be able to continue, our normal course of business, if we have to adjust it, I understand we're gonna have to adjust it, but I just would like you to take that into consideration as we go into the fall season. Also, many of my customers have actually left, and it seems like things are getting quieter. So if you could take the seasonality and the time of the year that we're in right now, I would appreciate that as well, for you to be mindful of that in putting restrictions on.
Yeah, point well taken. I mean, I would think hopefully that's more a conversation to have it at another level in the beginning of September.
Yeah, it sounds like you have.
Because I think if we can get people to moderate a little bit over the next few weeks, maybe, hopefully we'll be won't be in such a bad position going into the fall. Hear exactly what you're saying. I think that's the only one I can think of is maybe grass seed, right? But other than that, shifting people to night shouldn't be they should be doing it already.
Regular irrigation is happening already, but when you see people, some companies watering during the day, that's generally the reason. And most people are watering at night, like you said, as it is.
and as you said, Walter, there's already an exception in the code. So in terms of any legal enforcement, I think we're continuing that process of being mindful of new plantings, new seedings. So if you're, and also mindful of using bladder, temporary cistern water, temporary, being able to move water around and apply it in places correctly. I think that is part of the irrigation discussion. So as we go onward with this discussion, I think that all that this particular step is to say, this is a period of time where we're encouraging people to be mindful of water use, and that, not for new plantings, but for watering your lawns, evening is the time to do it. For any irrigation systems that do exist, particularly in the near shore area, evening is the time to do it. But I think that's consistent with your business practices. You're not watering existing stuff for people. So
yeah, that's correct. The only other caveat to the going, catching it before we go into fall, we will definitely lag on that. So really your seeding window, let's say, was from September 1st to November 1st. If you put restrictions on that today, I highly doubt by November 15th they'll be lifted, because it does take time for the aquifer to react, even if we do get rains. So that's the severity I see of it from my end, from my operations end.
But to really, to understand your concern, your concern is a restriction on the watering of new grass during the day.
That's correct.
Okay. And Peter's
And is
response.
that watering happening from well water, Walter?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And Peter's response is there's an exception in the code for new plantings, including new grass. All right. So does our recommendation apply to new grass and new planting?
The question is going to be, are we mandating, or is it just a voluntary? And if it's voluntary, then they're going to do, if they feel they need to do it, they do it. So that's a different, kind of question,
We're going to recommend that the town board, we recommending that the town board message this? Or are we recommending that the town
message, but it's the message either way. The question is it a voluntary or a mandatory? Are you going to be subject to fines if the, building inspector walks by and you're doing it, or a warning or, what have you? Quite honestly, I'm a little indifferent at this point because I think we're towards the end of the summer and mandatory is, only going to go so far. And if we're going to have to get more severe, we'll probably do it in September. I think we
Well,
all
also, as
completely,
we've seen,
even in
Sean,
looking,
as we've seen
in looking at,
Just a minute.
and
absolutely.
maybe you guys are going to want to presumably engage in when we talk about irrigation and stuff more generally. Clearly, we've discussed having all you guys in and trying to better understand. But it's part and parcel to, I think, not to jumpstart that conversation because we shouldn't, but in the same way. But I think it's part and parcel is that ideally we'd like to migrate this community that if we're in a very significant drought, everybody's not like, well, I'm going to do my fall seeding like I always do, because it just doesn't make any sense. And that garden, and I understand everybody's trying to make a living, that garden that I wanted that has all these things that are not native, maybe I should be rethinking that because half of it's going to die unless I'm just watering the crap out of it for, the next 2 months. So some of it is trying to change behavior while keeping you guys employed and letting people do, reasonable things.
I totally appreciate that, and
Yeah.
I think it's a practice that I certainly practice to try to get people to do different things. But the reality is that some people want what they want. So,
Yeah.
we all try to make a balance on that for sure. And then the only other thing I would say is I think that the restrictions, if you're going to do restrictions at some point, just as a general policy, there's a lot more things that need to be looked at because just to make the policy fair, you have nursery people with plant stock, you have golf courses, 2 of them that have irrigation, you have Sylvester Manor Farm that does some limited irrigation. So just to be fair overall to see, where we're at with this, if, as it seems like if there's we're in a drier period and this does wind up happening and you are going to set in the future, possibly hard regulations, that it's going to be fair for everybody.
I think golf courses and farms, I think at the state level may be exempted from it. So we don't have a lot of power to do that. Seems ridiculous. Yes, it's like one of those things,
No,
but,
very simple.
but we
It's
hear
the
you.
application of pesticides.
But we hear you. Yeah.
Yeah.
What comments I have.
Okay.
The one comment
Any-
I was going to make was just that the mandatory restrictions require a code discussion and require code that supports those mandatory restrictions. Fines require code so therefore that section of our discussion really has to happen. Whatever we're doing right now with the drought document, it really has to be seen as advisory to both to the irrigation subcommittee and to the board and to the community. I don't see how, we are not putting in place mandatory restrictions.
Okay. Stella had a comment, I believe.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Actually, it's a question and a comment. So the question, if you are going to be restricting time of day, it would be I just want to clarify, for all watering, including hand watering, or no?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, because we have a lot of that going on. And number two, the statement really has more to do with the enforcement as opposed to the regulation. I'm personally supportive of putting the restriction in place. But the question comes to, is somebody going to be going around and looking for watering, or are we relying on neighbors to turn other neighbors in? How do we envision this working?
So I'll just speak for me, as Peter just said, and maybe I've come to the conclusion as going through this, is that I would say let's recommend voluntary, and that the town actually push it out and try to use moral suasion and put some signs, and hopefully that will create the, hey neighbor, why are you doing it? Don't you know we're, and the neighbor might say, well, have a nice day, I don't care. So we're just starting to lean into some of this. Yes, the code does not really help. The building department might go around and warn a few people if they see it, but fines are not really clear. It's not, that is something that we're trying to address. And so hopefully by next summer, we would have something in place where it could be much more routine to do some of these things. But I don't think that should preclude us from doing appropriate messaging at this point on a voluntary.
I frankly haven't thought through and don't know enough about the enforcement angles with this to recommend that it be mandatory. So I am fine with your recommendation, and also given where we are in terms of our assessment of the extent of the drought.
Yeah, moderate is moderate. Moderate is not severe, and moderate is not extreme.
You're right. Correct.
So I'll make a motion to adopt a recommendation to the town board in the form that we discussed, that, can be drafted for communicating to the public the state of a slightly more significant drought at a moderate level, and that water use during the daytime should voluntarily be restricted.
Okay, do I have a second? Second from Greg.
Second.
Members of the committee? All those in favor?
Favor.
Passed.
In favor.
Okay. All right, next.
Is there anybody else from the audience?
Oh, I thought,
Yeah, sorry.
sorry,
Go ahead.
I thought the audience had spoken, sorry.
Well, was only guy please stand up.
3 seconds.
Jake Barge, Ultra Round, 11 Locust Woods. Just a couple things. Have you guys talked with the CAC as far as watering and recovery for erosion around new construction?
No.
Overlays or anything like that?
No.
Okay, it's confirmed with the stormwater, New York State stormwater manual for.
What we've done is look at our data.
So just help me out a little bit trying to understand here. So the tide water fluctuation could be 3 feet typically? Is that what our average fall is, 3-4 feet?
It's up and down in the near shore area, not to the, if the tide is at this, then that maybe is the change that happens on a daily basis on the near shore well.
We're talking 3 or 4 inches of fluctuation in the wells. And we're worried about overtopping of salt water coming into the fresh water lanes? Is that our ultimate concern?
Or lateral, but overtopping, sure.
And has that happened anywhere? Do we know if that's ever happened?
These monitoring wells wouldn't represent that, no. We would only know from reports of folks with their private
We
wells.
talked to the hydrologist about that scenario, if that's possible.
It's certainly possible, yes.
But there has been reports just even over the last, Meg probably knows better than anybody else, of even over the last several months of various places around near shore when we've had these kind of extreme 6 weeks without rain, that, this guy's well salts, this guy over here, but it's like, seems to be like the people at the weakest links, which should be telling us something about a little bit of warning sign. And then ancillary to that is, there are many different, that I've heard of, these irrigation systems going rogue because of a break or this and that, and 5 neighbors' wells getting salted. And so we're trying to think of all of the permutations of how to protect, access to water more
Was there
generally.
any thought of asking the homeowners in those sensitive areas, putting in water monitoring systems?
That is part of the irrigation discussion is, how and that of which the next stage is engaging folks like yourself of what are the technologies that we know are out there, what are the best ones that we're not overlaying too many different types of technologies, but like how can we reasonably assess people's water use and shut off valves and things like that.
And then ultimately, we're concerned about the upconing of salt into an individual as well. And I thought Peter was doing a great job of trying to minimize upconing with the limit on draw. So if we have a very short draw and a period of rest, the chances of upconing is very, very small.
Lower volume of
A
draw.
lower volume of water. So we
Yeah.
pull less water, we pull it for a shorter period of time, but we pull it more often, then we pretty much limit the exposure that we would have to saltwater upconing. Is there any recommendation coming out of this committee for those type of things?
I think we're not there yet because we're in the middle of the irrigation, kind of thinking about code and what we could do that are kind of reasonable structures to do that can reasonably monitored and et cetera, all of that.
So if a homeowner has an irrigation system currently and they did something similar to that where they're able to run a short period of time, many smaller zone times, right? Periods of rest, and they really don't have the ability to salt their wells, what's the detrimental effects?
We're getting to the irrigation discussion, but I'll try to, agreed. I think that, part of what we've tried to do both in the WAC and the irrigation pamphlet and starting the irrigation discussion is irrigation isn't all bad and is actually good. It's needed, for all the different reasons, right? You want plants, you want not hardened ground, all that kind of thing. I think that that's part of the discussion is to figure out that makes total sense. Then take a step back and say, if everyone in the nearshore area is doing that and they're not planting natives and it's still somewhat aggressive, is that overall draw still going to be detrimental? And I think that's what we're going to have to kind of figure out of, how to navigate that and what's reasonable.
So I've had a couple clients concerned about fire.
What?
Fire.
Yeah.
So given the most
Yeah.
recent LA fires out there,
Yep.
I just want to let you know that has been a topic of conversation with some of my clients.
Yep.
And then the other thing, I guess the last thing I'll leave you with
And it's
is.
also been a concern of ours, Jay.
Yeah.
Okay. I haven't heard it, so that's why I was
Yeah,
asking.
we haven't, and we've had kind of maybe not as much because we talked about should fire be part of this, and we kind of, at least at the moment, I think decided not, and then we asked, and I think the fire department, as far as I know, doesn't officially, except for like if wind picks up and it's dry, they would make a determination. So I think that's a separate context of could there be not a lot of wind, but very dry, and we should be making some sort of public proclamation, but agreed, people then in their own properties don't want it to be abnormally dry so that they're at risk either.
You had one more point?
I do. So this committee's been doing a great job for a long time. And we've had a tremendous amount of data going over for a long period of time, over a lot of areas. It seems to me that we're trying to throw a blanket over all of Shelter Island and trying to manage the most fragile areas on the island. Has the committee given any consideration about having different zones or areas that you may have you might have a drought number for Menantic Peninsula and the center of the island is moderate or whatever, you know what I'm saying?
This document allows for different recommendations in different places. So the options there, explicit there.
And I think we're not there yet to think about whether the irrigation code should somehow be slightly different for nearshore areas.
I mean, there are,
I very much agree with that point because water is a block to block, house to house thing.
Right.
And so I recognize that. This document allows for that. But as Sean says, we're not far enough in our thinking to figure out how to apply
what's
that.
upset to me is that the house across from Allen Boatyard on the peninsula on Tar Kettle, it's on the Sand Point out there. I mean, so he probably has the ideal system that should be specified for most residential homes on Shelter Island. He's in like 4 feet of aquifer, and he's managing, you know, a beautiful system. He has a large storage tank, he's got very small draw, he's reclaiming some water off his solid surfaces. I mean, that's the model that we really need to be moving towards.
So I don't, by no means trying to cut you off,
No.
is that, because we know you're valuable and we've had these conversations before, is that we're going to be pulling you into the irrigation stuff? Because we are trying to think about the 10% off of, you know, that you can collect. Is that too low? Can we increase that and plan on collecting more? Like, where can we find ways to make it so that people can do some of the things, but without being a detriment?
And just my final point, Roy, so you have something in here that's gonna put one guy in the room right now out of business. I don't know if he's gonna come up and speak, but the restriction here will shut his entire business down, with regard to house washing. So I don't know if there's any kind of subsidies that the town could have if you're gonna come into these just extreme measures. If we get to that point where it's really bad, you're really looking at putting people totally out of work. I mean, we were out of work for a week or two in COVID, and look what happened now. We're talking about maybe shutting businesses down for a month or two based on what our drought regulations could be. So it's going to have a meaningful effect for people.
Wait a minute. What we have adopted is no lawn watering and irrigation.
Now, we're talking about house washing and a whole bunch of things in here that are regulations.
Yeah, I think it's talking more broadly.
It's not in here. We didn't do that today.
Oh, no, not today.
He's saying more broadly going forward.
For
Yeah.
future extremes, and we're talking about putting people out of business.
Understand that. Okay, but we didn't recommend it today. Okay?
I have to speak as well.
Yes.
And also I would say may
Wait a
I?
minute, Peter. Hold on, Peter. Go ahead.
Chris Rowe, also in landscaping.
I'm sorry, your name?
Chris Rowe,
Got it.
also in landscaping. I just had a quick question. So you guys just raised the percentages for the type of drought we have during this meeting, right?
That's correct.
So how is that number calculated? When you just assigned the new level, what was the percentage?
So the honest answer is, it's a judgment, okay? So we can't point to where those particular percentages go to. Can't.
I think what you might be asking, and whatever, is outside of the numbers we picked. When our monthly document is generated, they talk about what is it, the percentile from historical. And so what Greg does is it goes back through like 10 or 20 years of what was the well reading in August for the last 20 years. And then there is mathematically a median, which is like, what is just the midpoint? It's not an average. It's like you go through. So if it's whatever, 20 numbers, what is the, 10th or, or what have you?
I'm familiar with median.
Right, yeah, sorry. And then what we're doing is just taking the most recent number and how does it fit within that data set? So if it is below the median, which is the 50% point, and it is in the lower half of that historical data set, that's going to be how we're going to judge the percentages.
So what was that number today? The percent
Coming into the meeting, it was 20.
was 20.
Coming out of the meeting, it's 30.
No, I'm saying.
No, yeah, it was,
Assignment.
he said we were in the kind of 20th percentile, and part of that was being dragged down by one well that was more like 9%, and the others were slightly above 20. So as the overall average, it got down to kind of 20 or so.
So you like average the averages for the
Of
well.
sorts, yeah.
Right. All right. Well, so I'm sorry, sir. What was your name?
Greg.
Hey, Greg. So you said so you guys picked moderate, right? But you said it feels severe. Why?
Because when I look at my backyard, my lawn doesn't look so swell.
Right.
And trees are losing leaves, I think, all over the island. I mean, there's a lot of stress happening,
Right. But like that wouldn't have to do with the well levels, though. Like, so this, you guys are saying you're gonna do it based on well levels, right?
Well, but it's not, so you may not have had the benefit of looking this over. The well levels are like one of 6 factors that we're looking at in terms of, so we're looking at what are regional, climatologists or whatever telling us about what's happening in the area at a couple different levels. What's the historical data? How are we in versus historical data? Well levels. What are we in observed precipitation? So it might be that we got a lot of rain in, 3 inches of rain in the last week, but that's not reflected in our current well readings because they were taken before it. So it's a little bit of everything. Clearly, the wells respond to precipitation. Clearly, we've had none. And so I think the comment of it feels more severe is that even if I look at my, say, beach grasses, they're browning so severely that I can't remember even the last couple of years them browning as bad as they are. So it feels like something's a little more, but the data doesn't quite tell us that it is at the next level severe.
And we haven't gone on based on our feelings. We've just gone based
Yeah,
on
we're trying to use data, but so that was more of a flippant comment. It feels like it's going to get severe or,
So it's a judgment call. Do you think it'd be good for us to have like a methodology?
Well, that's what this is supposed to be, but what we're trying to do is create it that it realistically is subjective because there are way too many factors. And if you're not to get locked in you could do this on a point system, right? You could get very technical, but I think our general feeling was that's going to lock us in because it is so many different factors of, when the rain fell, just everything, heat level, so it's, I don't think we feel we can adequately create a very prescriptive methodology.
Right. But then, so if you have that.
So I need to step in as chairman here?
Yeah.
Okay, so you need to give us your comments. There's a 3-minute limit. We're over that already.
All right.
We're having a conversation.
Yeah.
So let me try and close it out, which is, Sean's right. There are lots of factors that we've got to take in. I'll tell you what I do. I look first at those well levels relative to the history. Are we below the mean? Yes, we're well below the mean. The mean's 50%. We're down at 20. Okay, so I say to myself, there's something going on here. Where is it? We're actually right at the break between moderate and severe, abnormally dry and moderate. So we went to the lower level. Why did we go to the lower level? In my head, because it hasn't rained, okay, since the data was collected. That's enough for me to have dropped it to the moderate level. Now we're going to watch those numbers. So that's the way I do it. It's a judgment, okay? If you try to make it too mechanical, someone's going to come in here, or we're going to say, yeah, that's what the mechanical output says, but. So we've got to leave ourselves some discretion. I don't know how best to do it other than that.
Okay.
So I'm watching the clock. I'm exercising chairman's prerogative here. I'm watching the clock because we're on about like item 4 of a 14-item agenda. So I would just like to ask you to keep coming to these meetings and keep participating in this.
Okay. Yeah, you got it.
Okay, and thanks.
And I'm sorry.
Also the irrigation piece.
Just to briefly, who is the power washing business?
He had to go.
Had to leave? Okay,
Yeah.
So, or ask him to reach out to us, because completely, and that's like one of those things, completely get it. Like, really, we want to push people to native plantings and and those kinds of things. So we are trying to change some behavior. He should come and give us an education on like how much water do you use, and could he reasonably stop in nearshore areas on that business if it's really bad drought, or like how can we work with him so that he can function? I mean, that's just a conversation.
Right. I'll let him know.
Yeah.
Okay, I will have failed.
And Andrew, just in relation to Jay's comments and the comments in general of all these people involved in the businesses related to water, the irrigation committee earlier on had been quite an open committee. Jay was a part of it. Walter was a part of it. The present irrigation subcommittee is a little bit more tightly drawn. We were looking at regulations, and that, of course, has alarmed a number of these people. I think that we will expect the irrigation subcommittee to open out again, so that we are getting these important stakeholders into the discussion at the table, so that what we do is well advised.
Okay, I agree with that, Peter. And I would like to actually go to item 10, given that we've had all this discussion, these people are in the room. Go to item 10 and ask for an update on the irrigation code revision. And I also want to talk about process to reflect how we actually engage with people who are interested in this. In other words, picking up on the comments you just made.
Mm-hmm.
So you're on with item 10.
Yeah, so I've been struggling a little bit with mobility, and so I was there on Zoom. I circulated to all of you Sean's notes, which I edited and added to about that discussion. I think one of the big elements of this discussion is that we're beginning to approach the building department was part of that discussion, making it even more town internal. And their concerns were that we have these irrigation laws that have been on the books. In theory, well-drawn irrigation was to be sunset years ago at this point. I think that there is a strong appetite, at least in the currently constituted irrigation committee, to eventually, and perhaps in a 2-year timeline, sunset well-drawn irrigation. There are a lot of very specific, there was certainly a lot of discussion about using smart technology. There was some discussion about some subtler points, tennis courts, the watering of tennis courts. We did not at all talk about power washing people's decks, but and there was some discussion of temporary cisterns, bladders that can be moved around, various ways of moving to cistern-based watering that either uses existing cisterns but without being well drawn, and that there be some monitoring of those as well, both the intake and output from those cisterns. So those elements were under significant discussion in that last irrigation subcommittee meeting. The point that Joe raised in the last discussion, which is that he was not happy with the idea of encouraging reliance on trucked-in water, did in fact come up. And Reed Karen pointed out that Southold had banned any use of their water to be trucked into Shelter Island. And I raised the question, would trucked-in water even be an option 5 years from now? It really may be something that we're creating a dependency on that may not work so well. And then what are the on-island alternatives? Now here I'm just going a little further than I was able to in the irrigation subcommittee, and just to point out that our discussion has really led to the conclusion that if we're going to use water on Shelter Island if we're going to be restricted to water from Shelter Island only, it better not be near shore water that we're using. And there are times when we have lots and lots of water and when we can even have flooding conditions, but we are failing to put in place forward-thinking mechanisms for storing that water. So water storage is something that I personally intend to push further on this irrigation committee. The other element that did come up was that something that Sean referred to, which is that irrigation is often a benefit. Having dried, water-phobic landscapes, runoff and erosion is not what we're trying to achieve. A certain amount of softening of the land is necessary. The other thing that I know you are struggling with, Andrew, is the Island Center has high nitrogen water, and septic systems that the water effluent from septic systems could be used, particularly in the nearshore area where there's a very, very shallow distance between the septic system, between the leaching field and the water table in the aquifer. So pressurized shallow drainage irrigation systems could be used for irrigation of small rectangular parcels. It doesn't solve all of our problems, but it solves a series of problems together. So the establishment of strips of beach grass and things that can both take up nitrogen and at the same time stabilize the land, and at the same time keep the land soft, and at the same time accomplish a degree of irrigation without taxing the aquifer, are forward-thinking approaches.
Okay, so my question as chair, just a minute, Meg, my question as chair is around process. When we were at the last meeting, and when this irrigation discussion was launched, someone, can't remember whom, conveyed the impression that this could be done very quickly, that rewriting the irrigation code could be done very quickly. It's pretty clear to me that this is a hot topic. So what's the process going to be to get the public input so that we can actually get to a broadly endorsed set of recommendations? Because that's the only set of recommendations that people are going to follow. So that's a question. Meg?
Yes, I have the answer. I've made these questions. So the process is going to be very simple. We have a small internal working group. That group is going to be going over the document. So far, we've come up with more questions than answers, and people in the group have been assigned questions that they are to reach out to specific individuals who have answers and bring answers back to the group. And we're going to do this the same way you would modify any code, right? So the process is one that is long, it's drawn out, it has a lot of public input. So essentially, we're gonna come up with a rough draft of what we think the code needs to cover, based on information that members of this subcommittee have collected from experts in the field and through experience and observations. And then that draft would go out to the public for comment. And so it's gonna follow the same basic process. We're not gonna pull people from the public into the drafting process. We're going to go and reach out to them for information.
Okay, so when do you think this committee, and therefore the public, could see a draft code?
Not for a couple of months.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be real with you,
I think
it's
we're
not gonna be
talking-
a quick turnaround,
Yeah,
so.
I think we're talking about, we're going to be working this through the fall with the idea of then try to elevate, and tell me if you disagree, elevate in the, at this point, it's probably more like January or something like that into the public so that we can try. That process you can only control because there's timelines and public things or whatever, but then to get it done before spring of next year, that it becomes law.
So January discussion here of a draft code?
Possibly.
Possibly. It's a goal, it's not where. I would just add, there are clearly a number of policy questions about things. There's also a lot of just easy pickings. And so I think we were heartened that I think most of the people on the committee agree there are just structural things like a very clear permitting process, and deadlines and follow-up and inspections and things that are going to make it more regimented. Then there's the second part of it is where do you actually restrict it in any way of either times of day or length of hose or water source or what have you. But I mean, the first part of its structure, I think we all see okay, that's, we can just do that.
Okay, so who on the committee owns this? You?
Peter and I, yeah.
You and Peter, okay. So between now and January, February, I'm going to have a update item. And so all I'm really looking for as chair is how are we shooting,
We're
what's
getting
the,
towards that objective. Yeah.
what's the target for a code coming to this committee and therefore to the public at the same time. And I would say January is a good target because that allows some good discussion in January and February and March, and then hopefully for it to go into place before the next growing season. If this committee doesn't see it till April, it won't happen.
Agreed. Yep.
Okay? Okay, sorry, I am being rather authoritarian here and rushing this meeting along.
You're being clear, and that's fine, yeah.
Okay, fine. That was item 10, but we have to go back to item 6. Public event schedule, Peter.
Right, well, let's keep this one brief also.
Yep.
We really need to focus in on next weekend.
Correct.
Saturday is the Green Expo. So far, my back's out, but with enough ibuprofen, I can probably manage. On the other hand, I'm also responsible for 2 different tables, the Fresh Pond table as well as the Water Advisory Committee. I included you in a discussion with Tim Bertel, suggesting that we combine with the WQI at our table. I think that would, we've done that in the past. So I'm hoping that you're amenable to that idea, Andrew. But I have Dave saying he's available from 11 to 12. Sean is out. How about you?
I'm there the whole time.
You're there the whole time. Great.
Yeah,
I'm gonna enjoy hanging out.
Okay, I didn't think I
I'll be
was.
on a lot of ibuprofen,
Right.
but I will enjoy hanging out.
Okay, so
Greg, do you think that you'll be able to join us on
who on
Saturday?
the committee can help cover the table? You're
It's
out.
me.
You could-
11 to 12.
I got you from 11 to 12, okay.
Right.
I'm there from 11 to 3.
And Greg, were you not available or are you available?
No, yes, I was going to be there.
You're going to
Okay.
be there. Great. Okay. So now we have
Which is
the
the
committee
spot they have
available
there.
to the community.
Where the a gap needed?
I'll take you as much as I can take you from 11 to 3.
That's fine, put me there.
Okay, fine.
If you want to wait until Dave is finished, 12 to 3.
Okay, Sean is,
And just one more piece of information back to the committee. Tim has 200 irrigation brochures for us, so we'll be able to be discussing irrigation. And I think that that irrigation brochure, Sean had a big hand in building that, and I think that it's a very balanced document. We've already heard how important it is to sort of have balance and to have input from all the stakeholders. I think that's a very good basis for having discussions about the irrigation related issues. Obviously, we haven't gotten up to the center triangle kinds of issues that you've been focused on, Andrew. But I'm glad you'll be at the Green Expo. Beyond
Okay.
that, there's the 101 fresh water, Shelter Island Water 101. Sean and I had recognized that it was really important to really work that document for a while. So we're not going to create a meeting based on Shelter Island 101 in this period of time. I would think that this is something for the beginning of next season when people are out here, maybe beginning of shoulder season, June of next year.
okay. Can we also have at the session at the Environmental Expo, 100 or 200 copies of the Suffolk County Water Authority request for,
I have some
Testing.
that I'm trying to get to someone because I made, I don't know, it was 100. It's not 200, but it'll be enough to get you through
Okay.
that, I think.
all right.
And do we also have the fertilizer?
Yes.
Yeah, I think Tim was going to bring those. Yeah.
Fertilizer as well as irrigation? He mentioned
Yeah.
irrigation in the,
Yeah.
Yeah, we have both.
Okay.
Good.
All right. Anything else on that? Item number 6. Okay. Joe, welcome back. 2 items, 7 and 8. Where are we with the 10-year baseline study update? The last time we talked, there were a number of different panels being discussed and different scenarios, different costs and so forth. Do you have a recommendation for us?
I don't have a recommendation. The pricing was supposed to be in by August 15th. I followed up with USGS and they're asking for 3 more weeks to finish their pricing. Its proposal's been completed, but they are reviewing it internally before they release it to us. And they're asking for a little bit more time. That's on the 10-year baseline study.
Okay, so at the September meeting, we will have your recommended option
And a price tag.
and a price tag,
Yep.
okay?
And that's essentially the same report I have for the saltwater intrusion study update. I've asked USGS to reevaluate their scope now that we have these 2 new saltwater monitoring wells going in. And they've not responded with the scope specifically, but indicated that they're working on it and they need some more time. That particular study is a bit flexible in terms of how much additional monitoring they do with the MRI field arrays that they set up.
Right.
So if we're working within a limited budget or fixed number, there is some mobility on how many of those arrays we deploy. And so the price may be a little bit softer on their end now that we have these deep water monitoring wells to complement the data sets. And they're working on rebalancing that scope to meet our budget.
Will we have a recommendation from them and a price in September?
I've asked, I don't know whether we will, but
Okay.
we're aware that that is our request.
We will for the 10-year baseline.
That's what they've indicated.
We might not for the other, but they've been asked.
They both replied to say they are aware of our budgeting timelines, our fiscal cycle. I'm just hopeful that they'll achieve these deadlines.
However, the saltwater well issue is not a budget issue. It's something that's going to be happening. It's already in process, essentially. If I'm
So
not
no,
mistaken.
the magnetic resonance imaging piece of that is a
Is
budget issue.
Right,
Yes.
correct. I'm just separating those 2 pieces.
Right.
One piece of it is in the works and funded not by us.
Correct. The other piece of it, though, is what correlates the kind of macro saltwater intrusion to the near shore experience here on Shelter Island.
That's
And
right.
that's important.
And the analysis part.
Correct.
The wells are going in now as part of a larger regional saltwater monitoring effort. The analysis that will come with that will be associated with that larger regional effort and is, perhaps many, many, many years away before it's concluded. So to get localized answers in an appropriate timeline to inform policy, that budget item that we've proposed would allow us to use those instruments, but in a faster and more localized way for collecting data.
Is there any expectation that there'll be some filtering of information before they generate their regional report, or they're kind of like?
The data will always be public. So in terms of accessing it, we'll always have
You can
that.
look at it and say, well, but.
We'll always have that.
Okay. Done on 7 and 8. Item number 9.
As soon as I get the collection,
Okay, I saw an email that you sent last week
Yeah.
that you want the collection bottles this week so we can have them at Environmental
be
Expo.
good if we could do it.
What do I have to do?
I don't know. You have to sign something, I guess.
Who's going to give me something to sign?
I don't know. Jessica's not here.
I know.
She has the quote.
Jessica has a quote. Chloe, can you and I talk about this at the end of the meeting? Jessica apparently has a quote for collection bottles for the chloride study. We want to have the collection bottles to hand out at the Environmental
Honestly,
Expo.
at this point, we're probably not going to get them.
Well, let's see. what we can-
I think they quoted 4 days or shit.
I have a practical thing here. So if we hand them out at the expo, the program's not really gonna take effect until sometime after school starts and they establish a protocol and figure out what they're gonna do. So I feel like you're just gonna be throwing away bottles because people will take them and have no real.
It's for 50-cent bottles. So
But it's.
it would be good for the public event.
All right,
If we
but it
can't do
seems like
it,
we might
fine.
not have them. So if we're not, if
You
you don't
might
think
want-
that we're going to have them,
No.
we
Okay,
might want to
so
look
let's
at a
do
plan
something
B.
else.
Something in September.
Let's do something else. let's have, and could you do a description of this project? And, no, do a description, do a description of the project, something, a handout for
for
the
the meeting?
environmental expo.
Sure, yeah.
Because I can also see the students going around with the bottles, house to house, and handing them out. And you'd have also a tighter chain of custody if you were doing that.
I don't think, well,
Let's try to use the event on Saturday as a way to market this, if we don't have bottles.
Yeah, it might not be execution, but it could just be publicity to start.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you can just do a flyer that says coming soon, in coordination with Shelter
Yeah.
School District. In the
Yep.
fall will be, X, Y, Z. And then that way people are gonna look out for it.
And then we also know what the group of students is. We will know who the students who are going to be entering the science class are. So during the summer, we could actually contact the appropriate families of those students if we're going to be using high school
Get
students.
us a flyer?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm next.
but anyway, so how are we gonna get the bottles? At
Okay.
some point, we gotta get the town to,
Right, we got to get the bottles. We probably won't get the bottles this week, but we
No.
will get a flyer this week.
get a flyer.
Okay,
Let's
so-
not put
I'll
the
get-
bottle.
The bottles are an offline conversation,
Right.
purchasing, we need a voucher.
Okay, good. Let's not wait for the next meeting to talk about
Correct.
purchasing the bottle,
Okay,
because then school's open.
correct. Okay. Center triangle, testing. All right. We did 148 tests in 2023. 44% of those tests came in at nitrates over what's known as the action level, between 5 and 10 milligrams per liter. Roughly 6 of those tests came in at nitrates at non-potable levels. In other words, over 10. Having that number of wells, that percentage of wells at the action level, 5 to 10 milligrams per liter, points to those wells being under septic influence, because there really isn't a good explanation other than that for nitrates in well water at that level. That begs the question of what else, if there's septic influence going on, what else is in that well water? Because all we did was test for nitrates and bacteria. Accordingly, I have asked, included in the WAC's budget request, monies to test full potability tests for 250 wells in the center part of the island during the next fiscal year. That assumes Suffolk County that assumes the Suffolk County Department of Health does the tests at $100 a test. I went to Jason Heim at the Suffolk County Department of Health and kind of took him through all this, wrote a letter, sent a PowerPoint summary of the well tests that had been, of the testing program that had been done in November of 2023, and asked him if there was enough going on here that Suffolk County would do these tests and pay for them. And the answer was, well, if you want that, I got to stack you up against all kinds of other similar requests around the county. And I don't know what the answer is going to be. And you're asking for an awful lot of tests, because most of the tests I do in that program are in the 5 to 10 to 20 range, and you want to do 250. So he didn't say no, but he also didn't really say, what I took from that was don't count on it. So I put that in my budget request, or the committee's budget request for the next fiscal year, and have discussed that with the supervisor in presenting that document. So that's where so it's in the town's budgeting process. There is also a question as to whether there could be WQI funding for that. I don't know the answer to that. The supervisor raised that question and would get to and so I think there's going to be an effort to kind of get to the bottom of that. But I don't know the answer to that. where that request goes is it goes into the budget process. It gets weighed by the supervisor and the others she counsels with, and it gets in front of the town board. So we'll see whether it's recommended. But even in any event, it'll come before the town board, and our committee, if you agree with it, should appear. We are mighty, and there are 5 of us, and we should appear en masse, and we should make the strenuous arguments for this. So that's what I'd ask you, but that's my update on that. So we've made a formal request, and it's gone into the budget process.
2 questions. One, do we know that this is on the agenda for the WQI to discuss, and whether it's a local policy decision or they need to ask upstate or something, that it's actually, okay, so I mean, that's it. If we're going to be trying to move the ball, then, you let me know whether it's, you're going to go to the chair of the WQI, what is the process? Or
I can give you some input on that.
Yeah.
They changed the law, the state changed the law that the WQI works under. And they took all of the specific projects, the project types, they pulled that out of the law. And it was under the earlier list of things that you were allowed to do with WQI money that said that doing the testing for people like we were talking about doesn't really fit in that. Now that's out of the list, and what's replaced it is a group of, it's about 11 people. It's the supervisors of the East End towns and a group of other people. A couple of lawyers. It sounds like a head honcho lawyer. I'm a little lost, I'm close, but I may not be exact. They are now working up their procedures of how they're going to operate, the group of 11. I think it's going to take a little bit of time before they will be able to say, okay, we have a procedure in place, we understand what you want to do, and they're going to talk about it and say whether or not it should fit in and be allowed in WQI funding.
Is it worthwhile sending that body a letter and saying, we are seeking clarification? And they may say, we need to finish our procedure before we give you, but go on record that we want you to tell us yes or no, whether that's.
That part I don't know. We'd have to check with this.
So that's sort of if you
We
could
did check with Fred Thiel, who was involved in setting up the WQIs. And his advice to us was that testing alone was not covered. You could have testing in relationship to a water quality improvement project, but not testing alone. Again, the Junta of 11 or whatever may have its own ideas, but Tommy John Schiavone's predecessor, Fred Thiel, in this district, advised us that no, this would not be covered.
All right, so.
That group is now in charge, so we'll see what happens.
Okay, but I want to take a step back from that, which is I've asked the town through the supervisor and the town board for this funding to essentially request a commitment towards getting to the bottom of the water quality issues in the center. That's what I've asked for in the town budget. Unless somebody commits to the money from somewhere else, I'm going to keep that request out there. Because if we can get it out of the WQI, my message to the supervisor is, here's 25,000 back. But I don't want to depend for this testing on some funding source where I don't know whether it's eligible. And I'm asking the town to, there's been a lot of discussion about what's going on in the center. It's been going on for decades. I'm asking the town to actually fund this testing because that's the only way we're going to define this problem. And if there is a problem, that's the only way we're going to define it. And that's also the only way that we're going to be able to craft a solution. we need that data.
So just agreed. And I don't think what you're saying precludes is that then if that process is going forward with the town board, I want to be able to tell the town board we have actively participated in trying to find the money elsewhere. We can say we hit a roadblock, we sent a request to this thing, you know, people they haven't said it, whatever, but like that we've done our due diligence part of it.
I think we should follow this.
Yeah. But then while I think it's an early budget request, like the process, I don't know, that isn't fully started, I think part and parcel to that is also what do you and what do we, or if you've given thought, and we don't have to get it all through it now, but I think is what does that process look like? Because I've struggled with the lack of participation. And how can we increase participation? What is our methodology? Is it door to door? Is it like, what does that look like that we're gonna somehow garner 250 people, assuming that we had the money? And I've talked about this before with Peter. There hasn't been any follow-up, just not because of us, but just, it was just an idea of who, as a possibility, who in town center is a vocal local that can help us, you know, kind of rabble rouse around a little bit, that it's not just seen as, well, this committee wants knocking on my door and I don't even know these people. Some thought process around how we can do that, because otherwise I think it's kind of, it's not pie in the sky, but like, it's great, but then, you know, we still are going to be chasing people to, you know,
Okay. So my answer is I haven't gotten that far yet.
Okay, but I think it, you know,
think
has
that's
to start
very-
happening if
yes.
we're gonna, you know, because then and then the second part of that, which is harder, because if the WQI says you could use this money if it was part of a bigger plan. So I think you need to give some thought. I've always had in the back of my mind, well, what happens if we get this data and it's, you know, and it's bad? Are we going to say, here are 3 filtration systems that cost $350 that you can put under your counter, and if you show this kind of, you know, need, QI, and make an application, and QI will pay for it, or pay for half of it, or like, so I think we need to kind of be leaning into, we can't assume that we know what the conclusion is, but there are parts and parcel that people are going to say, well, what are you going to do with the data? And we may actually be willing to give you money if you have a plan to do the data. So I think all of that needs to be moving under the surface, I think, if we're going to.
That needs to be moving in the background.
Yep, in tandem.
What we cannot do is get all tangled up in what the solutions are
Agreed.
before we know what the problem is.
Agreed.
And we may find out there isn't a problem.
Yep.
My
So,
own view
Andrew,
is there are enough contributing factors to make me recommend further evaluation of the water quality to see if there is a problem. It's not like we're going into an area that we believe is pristine.
Agreed. The only reason I say that about leaning forward is that if QI says, we got lots of money, but you can't be just doing this, you got to have at least a lean towards an action plan. You can come up with an action plan that's, you know, maybe not set in stone, but they'll say, you know, you're moving in the right direction, here's some money, right, you know.
Got it. 2 different questions.
Yeah.
It's-
Can I just comment directly to what Sean is saying?
Yes.
So, Sean, there was a lot wrapped up inside of what Sean was just saying. Now, it's not the reverse osmosis system that we might recommend under people's sinks isn't going to be $350, having just put 2 of them in. But nevertheless, it's the right direction to go in. Is the question of, are we, in fact, if we're going to be relying on filtration to solve the problem, or would there be, subsidies? Again, not this discussion, down the line discussion, but he's right that combining a solution with testing is in fact more likely to be WQI fundable and in general more appealing, rather that we're going to do something with this information. The second thing is that the way that the center triangle it's instructive to think about how the center triangle was established. That was based on WQI, that was based on, am I frozen? No, I'm still good. That was based on Suffolk County Health Department tests that were FOIA'd and analyzed just for the nitrogen on a street level. We already can do that. We have access to that information. We can tell what the PFAS numbers are. We have FOIA the PFAS numbers for all businesses. And, anecdotally, without having done statistical analysis of that data, they're not good. They're not particularly center triangle focused, that FOIA data, but we could FOIA the data from the center and come up with what else is in the water.
Okay. Thank you for that, Peter.
Oh, and one last, just also, one thing that I've been asking for some time and I'd like to see happen is that the email address that you can send, if you want to voluntarily send your test to us, to the committee, to the town, that email address is still not on. We have an email address, it's just still not on the website. It's not on the WAC page. People always ask me, what can I do with my test? Can I send it to you guys? And the address is not posted. I want to refer them to the WAC page.
Yeah.
All right.
There's probably two things that, I don't know who does our web page or whatever we could explore of. One, is there a drought label at the top of our page? It seems it's elsewhere, I think, on the, I don't know if it's on WAC, but then also that at the very top of the page, get your water tested, send results here,
Yeah,
those should be simple web things to just add at the.
And look, we've been down this road with Monantic Peninsula. We asked for funding for Monantic Peninsula having testing. We didn't get the funding, but we did in fact stir up a lot more tests happening because that community itself became just the focus and attention on that you need to get your water tested became a thing within that community. And I believe you'll find that there are more tests happening than there were before.
Okay. I notice it's 4 o'clock. Is there any other business to come before this committee?
Doesn't mean I'm not being. It's just because I close my computer, it doesn't mean I'm inattentive.
Jay,
Could you just clarify one thing? We're talking about the monitoring wells that go down and that there's a cap or something on the bottom that maybe stops the water from moving. Could you just clarify what that conversation was?
Joe,
Today?
he said
That the well levels are a little different because some of the wells might have clay layer or something, or there was discussion about the.
Well, Walter asked about depths, and I was just indicating that the monitoring wells across the island are at, different depths, and there are different geological conditions, but I don't recall.
Is there a screen on the bottom that allows water to translucent between the pipe and the water?
Oh,
Or
of
is it
course,
just an open
yeah.
pipe
Yeah,
on
they're
the
all
bottom?
screened. No, they're screened. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And I think he was also talking about that in the near shore areas, you're affected by tide, so that changes a little bit.
okay.
And also be
Anything else to come
affected
before
by
you?
sea level rise.
I have one last quick little thing.
Yes, Walter.
It sounds like you have your hands full with the quality issue, but in regard to the quantity issue, I'm looking forward to being involved in more discussions about the irrigation. Just anecdotally, 1983 was the lowest well readings we ever had, probably pre a lot of irrigation. 2010, the highest, paid $100,000, I believe, to pump water into the South Ferry Channel. And on the irrigation committee, I believe that a lot of work was done, and we should be super duper happy about the fact that we stopped the irrigation from exploding, and 130 systems were grandfathered in. It's now under 100 because a lot of people have given them up and said, maybe this isn't such the greatest thing. So I think a tremendous amount has already been done, and I would just caution on affecting too much by going too far to one side. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Walter. Any other comments? Can I have a motion to adjourn? Oh, Jay? Oh, no.
Just making a motion.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.